I think an experiment in terms of testing the waters to see how your business can run without you before you take that bold step of stepping out of the business.
Welcome to Long-Term Thinking for Business Success, a show for and by business owners. Each episode will explore how to beat the odds and create a sustainable business and the life we've dreamt of. Today's guest is Larry Narunsky, the Technical Director and Founder of Convergent Water Controls, CWC. CWC provides cooling tower dosing packages, chemical dosing and transfer pumps, sensors, instruments and controllers with remote control capability to the Australian water treatment industry. CWC was started 28 years ago by Larry, and today the business has a significant presence in the commercial and industrial cooling, potable water and wastewater markets. Their solutions are extensively used across Australia and internationally. Hi Larry, welcome to the Long-Term Thinking for Business Success podcast, and thanks for joining me today.
Rick, thank you for having me.
Just to start things off, can you tell us what's the change you want to make with CWC? Or to put that another way, what's the vision you're trying to deliver and who are your ideal customers?
Most people just think of water as you open the tap and out comes water, but they wouldn't appreciate what is actually involved in bringing that potable water or fresh water to their taps. There would be three main sectors of water, which people wouldn't consider. Obviously, there's the water that you drink out of the tap. There's also the water that people put down the drain, which is mostly obviously do at home, but also in industry, it's more of a significant issue that the quality is of a certain standard. And then there's also water that's used in industrial processes. Could be anything from food manufacturing to water that's in your swimming pool and a vast array of industries. To answer your question, our long-term goal is to be a respected player and reference in that market sector and to be able to provide solutions and technical advice and support for customers and the industry as a whole.
The typical clients, are you working with large corporates that have wastewater throughout their campus or their building, or are you dealing with the New South Wales water type clients? Where is your ideal client base?
The end user of our products and services would be quite extensive, from small businesses right throughout to government-controlled bodies, water authorities, industries, shopping centres, hospitals. We distribute most of the products through middlemen, so to speak, which would largely be service providers in that sector, which are local Australian companies and big multinationals.
Has it always been a model where you've worked through distributors?
It has to be that way, purely because of the support required once equipment is installed. It's the type of equipment that require ongoing maintenance, support, calibrations, and we just wouldn't have the manpower to do it. We rely on those intermediate companies to provide those services. Just like if you had a swimming pool and they have to keep it balanced with chlorine and with salt or with acid for pH control. A lot of that is done manually, but what we do is provide equipment that automates the process, but it's not set and forget. It does need to be nurtured.
We're going to go pretty deep pretty quickly, but was there a strategic decision not to build out a installation and services part of the business, assuming that the business today is predominantly made up from product sales?
Yes, it was strategic. We can be defined as a solutions provider in that industry, but we are primarily an importer, stockist and distributor of products. Where we have a bit of a niche and added value is assembling packages where people would have a solution where, as we say, you just put water in and water comes out treated or measured or controlled.
We'll explore some of those decisions and lead you there later on. Just to go all the way back up to big picture, I find that business owners, we often forget to celebrate achievements and wins. Thinking about your success over 28 plus years, which is definitely a long time in a small business. What are you most proud of and why?
I'm proud of the business that we've built up. My brother and I, we are both owners of the company, mostly because it's something that I never thought that I would achieve. When I started out small, I thought I would always be small, having a small business, paying a wage, but we have developed a business that employs about 15 people, is very well respected in the market, and people do respect us. It's always great when you get positive feedback from customers in terms of the support and expertise that you do provide. So being that sort of market player and being a large player in our field does elicit a sense of pride.
That's great. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Just to go back a little further, then before launching CWC, after migrating to Australia from South Africa, you started Convergent Electronic Solutions. Can you tell us what this business was, and then what drove you to either start or change to Convergent Water Controls?
When I left South Africa, I was a qualified engineer, university trained. I worked in a manufacturing company, manufacturing electronic products that were distributed globally. When I moved to Australia, I was hell-bent on becoming a management consultant. As things turn out, I tried to get into that market and miserably failed, couldn't get any jobs. And so I was forced into working for myself. It was at the time where the internet was burgeoning, and I decided to start an electronic business, doing anything I could because that was my expertise. I was helping people set up computers to dial up for the internet. I was doing some electronic repairs and actually doing some work for the company that I worked for in South Africa. They had a distributor in Australia and was doing some work for them, just doing bits and pieces. Somebody also mentioned to me that the acronym for Convergent Electronic Solutions was CES, which at the time was the Commonwealth Employment Service, which I believe was the precursor to the Centrelink. And thought it's probably not a good name to grow with. I decided to change the name, but not before I actually found a market in the water industry, because that came very early in the piece. Before I get to that, the company that was distributing the products for the company in South Africa that I worked for decided that they didn't want to distribute the products anymore. And I fought tooth and nail to actually get that product line as an agency product for my little business that I had started. And the principal was very reluctant, me being a one-man band. But they gave us a shot. They realized I had the technical expertise for the product range. But when they agreed to it and we took on the range, we had to purchase a lot of stock. I had to get finance to purchase that stock, and it was just too much. That's when I went to my brother, Andrew, and I said, Andrew, you have to leave your job. I said, I'll pay you half of what you're earning now. I said, but we'll build something together. And to cut a long story short, he actually left his job. He joined me and we founded the business Convergent Water Controls. We were delving into the water industry. We felt that's where we might focus with electronic products, and that's why we changed the name to CWC.
It's often interesting when you look back at why, in this case, a niche, so the water and wastewater industry that you chose to work in, wasn't built on research and analysis of different markets, etc. It's often just a gut feel or a personal interest. What was the process to go from a very broad electronic services business to dive into the water and wastewater industry?
It was actually a bit of a stroke of luck. One of the things I failed to mention is that before I left South Africa, I actually went to some of my electronic suppliers and asked them if they knew of any other companies they supplied electronic components to who might be interested in an export market. Before I emigrated, I went to see a few of those companies and were given a few samples of their products and brought them over with me. And one of them just so happened to be a controller that was for a cooling tower that I knew nothing about. I knew nothing about the water industry. I didn't know anything about it. Somebody happened to meet somebody who introduced me to them, and we started discussing selling the products. Then there was a bit of a stroke of luck back in early 2000s, perhaps, where the Melbourne Aquarium opened up. On opening day, they had hordes of people queuing to get in. There may have been hundreds of people. On the roof of the aquarium were cooling towers, which, as it became known later, there was a dispute between the service providers and the building owners, and the cooling towers were not treated. The towers were spewing out moisture laden with Legionella bacteria, which then settled on the crowds below. Many people got sick with Legionnaire's disease. There were a few deaths. It actually led to the Victorian government changing legislation in terms of the minimum requirements for treatment of cooling towers and checking and testing. At the time, we so happened to have a product that met the requirement of their specification, and no one else in Australia had that product. So it was a bit of luck for us to get that product into the market and grow it quite rapidly. At the time, Telstra was actually the first organization in Australia to take it on board. And we managed to secure a deal where we upgraded their dosing systems on all their cooling towers nationally. Overnight, we had to bring in temporary labor, and we were frantically trying to produce 30 times what our normal capacity was. That was the beginning of the growth in that market sector.
It's an amazing story. I believe luck is always a factor in success, but it's not just everybody gets a little bit of luck. It's how you can capitalize on the luck. And it sounds like you, with some hard work and tenacious attitude, you've fought your way through.
A lot of business leaders say you need to make your own luck. And I think the luck does come along, but one does need tenacity and patience and perseverance. And there will always be something along the way, big, small, medium luck, but there's, luck along the way certainly does help.
Yeah, it definitely does. The cooling towers that you mentioned, are they still the flagship solution the business offers, or it's now very broadly spread across your products?
The first 10 years, perhaps it was the majority of the market that we delved in. After that time, we built up a big market share. There's only 4 players in Australia who make what we make for that market sector. We are possibly the biggest, we're number 1 or 2 in that sector. So we realized we're not going to grow in that market sector. And that's when we decided we need to grow in other sectors in the water industry. We had a lot of expertise we had developed in cooling tower water treatment, which we could extrapolate into other market sectors in the water industry though. And that's when we started looking overseas for other product brands that we could represent in Australia to distribute. Currently in cooling towers, it's probably about a third of what we do today.
When you look at across your product range, what percentage originated by you? You've done the specification and development and produce them versus importing third-party solutions that you then represent in this market.
The controllers that are used, which we have a registered brand name, which is called DigiChem, it's a trademark of ours. That's part of our IP, which is co-developed with a company overseas. And we have exclusivity for this market with that product, and that's continuing being enhanced and developed. But where our key IP is in an online portal, because nowadays the products are all accessible online. There's a portal, we have customers pay a subscription to be able to access the units online, and that's a scalable product that can obtain more and more subscribers. Besides that, we make package solutions. And what I mean by that is we might put a controller and a pump and sensors as a package system that is complete. So people who receive it don't need to assemble or design it themselves. There's IP or expertise in that is difficult to copy.
You've mentioned a couple of times that your brother's also a shareholder and joined the firm very early on. Given the two of you in the business, how do you share your responsibilities with your brother, and how do you work together to drive the business forward?
One of the things we identified early on is not to duplicate. That was one of the keys of growing the business. Very early on, decided to separate responsibilities distinctly. I have a background, as I mentioned before, in engineering. Andrew is experience was in IT, and we split the responsibilities that he would manage the business and would manage the IT and the accounting, human resources, and general management, whereas I would focus on product management, engineering, and dealing with customers. Distinctly different. We only really come together to make macro decisions. Obviously, we do liaise together on a daily basis, but we have distinct different functions, and that works well.
Do you run as a management team? Do you have any organizational structure that you formally use to drive the business on a weekly, monthly, quarterly, annual basis?
It can be a bit confusing for staff because they don't know who the boss is. But I think generally for people, when they need issues, they go to Andrew first, and I get involved where I need to. We do have very structured employee reviews on an annual basis. We have regular meetings with our different teams. We have fortnightly sales meetings. We have monthly production meetings. We try to work towards set goals for the next period. At each meeting, we look and we see have we achieved those goals, where we're lacking, what we need to change, and so on.
Just to delve a little bit further into your specific role. So your job title, at least on LinkedIn, is technical director, and you just outlined some of the areas of your responsibility. What I find in small businesses, especially founder-led businesses, that the role of the founder continually changes. I imagine if you thought back to that Telstra project you mentioned earlier, you were probably heavily involved in the implementation of that project. Could you share what your top priorities are in the business today and how you remain focused on those areas?
At this stage, I try to be focusing on implementing as many systems as possible and putting people in roles and with responsibility so that I can pull myself out of the business as much as possible. At some point in time, there will be an exit strategy. The business needs to start running by itself. Although I really do enjoy what I do, being involved in working on things in the business and working with employees and working with customers. We recognize early on that it's impossible to do things all yourself. And I think a lot of small business owners fall into the trap that they think they can save money by doing everything themselves. When Andrew and I made that leap of faith to employ our first salesperson who was earning more than the two of us together, it was also a defining moment in how the business grew from that point on. I think recognizing that other people can do things better than you can do them is something that is hard to acknowledge, because I think as a business owner, you always think that I can do everything better than anybody else.
Sometimes it's a matter of just being able to let go, and even if people do it differently, the end result is what you need to focus.
Somebody said, I don't know which business guru said, but it said you'll only be
successful when you can be happy with somebody doing the job sort of 80 or 90% as good as you can do it. That's true as well. I like a proposition that the more valuable we are to our business, the less valuable our business is to the rest of the world. So it's the same thing. The more we're entrenched in doing the things, the harder it is for us to then drive the sale of the business at some point or move out of the business. Given your comment about you're in the process of putting systems and processes in, one of the things that I get as a very common answer to a sustainable success for a business is the systems and processes that they're using. Can you tell us about one or two of the processes or systems that you've put into the business that has had a significant impact and what that impact was?
Largely done it, but it's an ongoing process. We made the conscious decision at some point to become ISO accredited for quality, health and safety and environmental responsibility, which we're accredited now through SAI Global. So a lot of those processes forced on us by going through that accreditation process. Every procedure is documented. If somebody normally works on a specific function, it could be technical support or it could be something to do with accounting, whatever it is, there is what is called an IMS, which is, I think, stands for an integrated management system. Everything is documented. It has version numbers. It's updated. There is a company manual that you can follow. People are often too lazy to go and have a look, and it's just easier to ask someone else if they get stuck, but everything is documented.
I'll come back to that documentation process, but just to push a little bit harder, in thinking about all those different components that you've documented within the organization, was there something that had a standout impact that as a process you didn't think it would be that impactful, but actually once you documented it and people started following it and using it, it actually ended up having a significant impact for the business?
I think we were very successful in developing our own, you can call it maybe an ERP system. It's a completely customized internal system that manages from when the order comes in till the system goes out. I can liken it to a system that perhaps like a McDonald's has. When you order, you go and you can order burgers and a burger meal. You can customize it how you like. You can leave this out. You can add that in. You can double the quantity. It comes up in the kitchen on a computer screen, prioritize all the orders, what you have to make first. We have a system that everyone follows from the order going in to go out and how things actually customize, how they have to be modified, what's going to be done in what priority, what special part has to be swapped out for this and that. It's become so ingrained in our people to use this that if somebody tries to circumvent the process and tries to just give the customer something or do something without putting it through that whole process, they get upset about it. By virtue of having that automated process, nobody has to be told what to do. Everybody is a piece of that cog. Everyone's a cog in that process and things just get done. The orders come in and the bids go out. It's not just goods in and out. It's complex, customized configurations made up of a combination of parts.
As I said, I'd love to come back to the process of documentation, obviously in my own business, but I work inside a number of other businesses. And I find that often there are some processes, but there's a Word document for it. And there's one version saved in this folder, then others saved somewhere else. And it's often just a mishmash of old and new and fairly disorganized in a pragmatic, practical way. How do you document or manage the documentation of these systems? Is it in a Word document that then somebody has master control of, or do you use some sort of application to store it? I'm looking for the practical advice to keep that organized, because it's great to have a system, but as you said, they need to be continually updated, refined, augmented as you use them. And then version control is often one of the banes of existence of it.
It's a combination of Word documents and databases. Word documents, we generally tend to use when it's relatively static, when a procedure is put in place. There may be updates over time, which is very easy to update because we've got a very rigorous versioning system that you cannot have a combination of old and new versions. The old versions get migrated to old folders and all the current versions are in a current folder and it's very well organized, and the numbering system doesn't allow that. The databases are where things are more dynamic, and they are customized databases that keep track of the versioning automatically because you have the computer doing that. As things are modified, they automatically get updated.
Is there one person or a couple of people in the business that has ultimate control over it, or do you then divvy it up versus functional responsibility?
Andrew would be the man because he's the IT guru with an organization. He has developed extensive databases, which if he wasn't around is potentially a bit of a weak point of our company, because if he wasn't there, we would have to perhaps rewrite things, or if things went wrong or We'd have to get somebody who understands how he's coded the whole thing.
Maybe that's one of the next objectives you need to focus on, is how to wean Andrew out of the business as much as you have yourself. Just to think back again over the life of the business, and despite all the careful planning we do for our businesses, unexpected things always seem to happen. In your case of the Melbourne Aquarium, there was a positive event that you managed to leverage. Thinking back to the past 28 years of building CWC, I'd like to know if something caught you by surprise, and if so, how did you adjust your business strategy to achieve your continual success?
I don't think there have been many things that have taken us by surprise, other than maybe one or two financial claims on us where things went wrong in industry and there were consequential damages, which was things that we worked through and negotiated through that cost us a bit of money, but did resolve them. Ongoing challenges in our industry would definitely just be competition. The competition is fierce. There's good products out there. We're not purport to be the best out there. Where we try and combat that is service and support. There are competitors that have very good products. We're not a premium product. We're not the cheapest product. We're middle of the road product, which is a decent quality for the money you pay. I think those distributing the products that we do on their own, it wouldn't be as successful if we weren't providing the support and service that we do provide. And that's something we harp on with our people and something that we really focus on. With our salespeople, we are very insistent that they get back to customers within 24 hours. If they cannot, to at least communicate with the customer to say they'll get back to them. This is with providing quotations. Technical support has to be within an hour to get back to somebody, because often they're on site and need immediate support. We often get positive feedback from clients. That is why they deal with us. Surprisingly, sometimes they put up with a lot of issues because of the support and service. They can continue to stick with us.
I think that talks to the point that people buy from people they like and trust. Companies don't buy anything and don't sell anything. It's the people within the companies that do the buying and selling. It's that relationship that ultimately drives to success. In that answer, you talked about some of the financial challenges you had on claims against you. Thinking back through that, were there lessons that you learned? If there was an experience that you've taken away and then adopted internally to protect yourself and ensure these things don't happen again?
Over the years, we've become a lot more diligent in crossing the T's and dotting the I's and doing checks and following procedures in terms of design, that everything's been covered so that you don't omit things or put things in place which are inadequate for the application or that sort of thing. I must also say that was quite a long time ago. So I think we've learned our lessons.
Congratulations. I've been in business for quite 28 years, but approaching that, and thankfully never had a claim. So hopefully that will retain for me. You've already mentioned a number of things that may be the answer to this question, but just to bring it in more succinctly, what do you think the three things that most contributed to your sustained success over the last 28 years?
There are a few things. I think one is to not undercapitalize. You need to invest in a business. If you believe you're going to be successful, you need to invest in that business and not try to do everything yourself, as I mentioned before. Following on from that, and as a part of that, is actually employing good people. Having the right people in the right seat. And if you acknowledge that people are not doing or don't fit the role, then you need to make changes. That's quite a challenge to find good people. It's very difficult to get good trained people who have expertise that you need. I found that in employing people, using specialist recruiters or headhunters, whatever you want to call them, can be worth it. They cost you a lot of money, but if they find the right people, it's really worth using those services. In terms of dealing with customers respect good advice. I think they can very easily see past, if I may use the word bullshit, that typically salespeople would feed them. When we employ salespeople, we focus more on getting somebody who has engineering expertise rather than somebody who's the good salesperson who wings their way past the engineering stuff. Customers really appreciate that and keep on coming back.
That goes to your comment earlier about it's your support and attention to detail that has driven the success. Just to go a little bit deeper on your middle point in terms of employing great people, and it is often one of the most challenging components of running any business, but specifically small business. Based on my research, and you mentioned earlier that you've got about 15 people on your team, many of those people have been with you for quite a long time. Could you just tell us a little bit about your team structure and how you've divvied it up? You mentioned the sales team, obviously. More importantly, what do you think you attribute some of your staff's longevity to?
We have 80 of our team are on long service leaves, which means they've been with us for 10 years or more. We've already had 2 people actually retire and going to retirement, and another one at the end of this year going into retirement. Our very first employee has actually still with us. It's been 23 years. Who's currently our production manager. He runs the assembly of our package systems. We have 3 or 4 people in that team. We have somebody who manages our stores. We have 4 salespeople, and we have 1 or 2 in engineering. I don't know how we did it, but I think we have fostered that sort of family environment. Everybody respects everybody else. That's quite important.
I might just give you food for thought to think about it and challenge the family culture, because there are plenty of families where there's lack of respect in the family and they're connected because of family. I think the culture you've got probably more aligned with an effective sports team where there is that inherent respect and it's about the collective good, not the individual good. There are fewer egos in a really impactful sports team than there is in a family, if that makes sense.
An example of that actually is we're currently in the process of moving premises, which we haven't done almost 20 years. The new premises, which requires a renovation, it requires restructuring. We're trying to purpose-build it for our operation. The people who work in the company know better than we do. And we've given them how to lay out the pallet racking in the warehouse, how to lay out the assembly area, the workshop, the offices that suits their requirements, which has actually made them very excited about it and wanting to be involved in it. This is quite an arduous task. For a small company, we have about 10,000 product lines that when they move over, items cannot get all mixed up. And we need to remain organized and trade at the same time while we're moving. We seem to just naturally have everybody on board and motivated for that whole process.
I wonder as well, you mentioned the organizational systems and structure and processes you've built into it. Often when you put that sort of thing into a business, there's fight over it, but I want to do my job this way or that way. I find in my own business, at least, that over time, when people have better guidelines on what to do and how to do it, they've got more autonomy in their job because they know the boundaries of where they fit. Do you think that putting in that quality assurance processes and then the systems to drive the business has helped people understand their role and therefore enjoy the work they're doing more?
Undoubtedly. In fact, just yesterday, I was working from home in the morning and somebody came over. He said, how do you ensure that your team is doing what they need to do? I said, it's an interesting question. The main reason is that we have systems, and if people do not play their part in the team, we easily identify where we start falling behind, and everybody knows their responsibilities and they fulfill those responsibilities. It's like you want to please your parents. It's the same sort of culture. You want to please everybody in the team. You don't want to disappoint.
Everybody's accountable to each other, and it's that accountability that drives the end result. In companies I've seen it where just because you're in an office and you can see that person doesn't mean they're doing anything. I've had plenty of colleagues that I've seen just spinning their thumbs, doing nothing all the day. Physical presence doesn't drive accountability. A shared vision and values is what I think drives it. You've mentioned a couple of times that you've got a sales team, you've got 4 people in sales in the team, and that your first employee was in sales. That's quite an unusual methodology in terms of building a business. Often, especially in engineering-led businesses, we find that the first step is actually to get somebody to help with the work of the business, the operations side of it, technical component, rather than in sales. Often the hardest part is growing an SME is managing the sales. It relies heavily on network of the owner or referrals that drive the business. Could you just tell us a little bit more about how you approach business development and why you've had such a keen focus on it?
Our first employee who's still with us, our production manager, he's helping with products and shipping and a bit of everything really in the beginning. But very shortly thereafter, we employed our first salesperson who actually left us after 3 or 4 years, has had 5 jobs in between, has actually come back to us. Now, we do have 4 people in our sales team. Largely, business comes to us because we've been around for such a long time. We have ongoing business, repeat business with customers, new projects. We do find it challenging actually to do business development. What we try and force our team to do is to lock themselves away to work on business development. That business development is looking at new products within our existing database or looking for new markets with existing customers. We utilize a cloud-based CRM, which is HubSpot, which keeps track of all our endeavors in terms of business development.
To go a little bit deeper, when you're looking at growth in any company, it comes from 2 core areas. You can either drive new clients and bring in new customers, or you can build better relationships with current clients, and that's either driving repeat sales or introducing new products into them. You've already talked a little bit about this in your previous answer. When you think about business development and the priorities of your sales team, do you think about it in terms of you actually are trying to drive them to bring in new people, or because of the length of time you've been in industry, is it much more a focus of building deeper relationships with current clients and looking to new products and upsell and cross-sell to current clients?
Absolutely looking after your existing customer base as a number one priority. Dealing with any inquiries that come in to the best of your ability and trying to sell what's been asked, but also to cross-sell. We drill that into the team all the time. Then to actually analyze your existing customer base and strengthen those relationships, look at the products that they're buying, look at what they're potentially not buying from you, buying from a competitor, and try and sell more to them. It's much easier, that low-hanging fruit, than to actually try sell new products to a new customer. It's important to do that because you're always going to lose business. You need to be gaining more than you're losing to grow.
When you think about your marketing and the efforts that you put towards marketing and budgets towards marketing, do you think that the marketing efforts are more focused on developing and sustaining current relationships, or is it actually the marketing effort is much more about the new clients?
Marketing is something that was done very ad hoc until 4 or 5 years ago, until we contracted a digital marketing agency to plan, manage that for us. A small business always sees it as perhaps a hard pill to swallow, spending a lot of money on something that doesn't have direct outputs. I do see that we have had better growth over that period than before. I would have to think that it's attributable to the marketing that we've done. SEO, paid media, digital newsletters, social media like LinkedIn posts. We do get more and more new inquiries that would have to be attributable to those marketing endeavors.
It sounds like your marketing is more focused on bringing in new work rather than helping your sales team, account management, client relationship team build and support the relationships with current clients.
No, I would actually say it's more existing customers. It's a challenge to educate your existing customer base on everything that you do because they only know what they know until you tell them that you're doing something else. Of course, yes, if we bring in new customers, that's fantastic because that's chipping away at your competitors. And that would come from SEO, paid advertising and social media posts and so on and so forth.
Broadly looking at where the business has come from and where it is today, if you could change one aspect of your business overnight, what do you think that would be? More importantly, why?
I would look more at the scalability of the business and perhaps got involved more in products or services that were more scalable than products, services and solutions that were very focused on one's involvement in them from a sort of a micro level, which makes it quite challenging because it's from project to project. You have to be quite intimately involved with it. So I would be able to make the business more scalable to grow quicker would be to be more involved in product distribution.
So I'm understanding that a lot of the work you do, although you're selling solutions, you've actually got to help your partners understand the system, put it together, configure it so that they can go off and install it rather than just saying, here's the product and you know what to do with it.
If we're looking at it narrowly from a business growth revenue aspect, but in saying that, the type of work that we do in the systems we provide and the satisfaction that we and customers get from the products is important from a personal perspective because it gives a lot of job satisfaction that you're providing something that's helping somebody else. That doesn't always come down to profit. You're involved in your business for a long time. You've got to be happy and enjoy what you're doing and feel satisfied in what you're doing.
You do. It definitely makes a huge difference. Just to push that a little bit further down, a great strategy is focused on really the most impactful activities. Our experience has shown that at any point, a company can really only effectively work on a finite number of priorities, typically 3 or 4 internal key initiatives. Your move is an example of one. Could you talk about 1 or 2 of the current strategic initiatives that you're working on and the decision you use to determine these priorities?
As I mentioned earlier, we are moving premises. The landlord's going to be refurbishing the premises where we're in. We actually see it from a positive perspective. We've been in the same premises for so many years. It's a good opportunity to start afresh, clear out old stock, clear out stuff, restart the lead operation and improve processes in terms of layout, procedures, processes, improvements. In terms of growing our business, where we do see our growth in the future is expanding on the agency product lines that we import and grow the business there because we're a much smaller player in the market. We have a lot of competitors. There's a lot more opportunity in actually growing those product brands in the Australian and New Zealand markets.
I didn't quite understand the term in the context of your industry. Agency products?
This is a product that we represent for an overseas manufacturer, and we have the exclusive rights to distribute in Australia.
Thanks for that explanation. That's still remaining in the water and wastewater industries, or are you starting to see what other industries could use similar products that you bring into Australia or produce yourself?
Now, our focus is to stay in the water industry. It's a very diverse market, and there are a lot of avenues in water that we're novices at or we haven't even dipped our toes to yet. There's still plenty of opportunity, and remaining focused in your market is a better strategy.
I agree as well. As I said, the business is 28 years old. You said earlier that at some point in the short to medium future, you'll be looking potentially for change in your business. And Bill Gates famously said that we overestimate what we can get done in 1 year, but significantly underestimate what we can get done in 10 years. Where do you see CWC in the next 5 to 10 years? And more importantly, what are the key obstacles you think you need to overcome to get there?
Following on from what we discussed before, Andrew and I are two key players in the actual business. To be able to step away from the business for a certain period of time to see if the business can run itself. I'm keen at some point in time to try something that a colleague of mine has done who's in a similar business. He's actually a customer where there's 3 partners, not 2, where they built up a business actually bigger than ours in a smaller period of time. The 3 owners did an experiment where each of them successively took 6 months off to see how the business would run without them. They did do it, and the company's still flourishing. So it must have been successful. I think an experiment like that is not a bad idea in terms of testing the waters to see how your business can run without you before you take that bold step of stepping out of the business.
Do you think there are any key obstacles you have already identified to be able for you to take a 6-month sabbatical from the organization?
There'd be certain functions which other people would have to be trained to do, delegate certain tasks. If you're happy with the job being done 60, 70, 80% as good as you can do it, then I think one could make that step. There are certain processes and things that we still need to do, moving things to the cloud, IT systems, financial systems, that also make it affordable, being able to work from anywhere.
Yeah, the language we use is more sustainable.
That's a good word.
I think that will be a perfect place to bring us to a close. Larry, thank you for your time and allowing us to dive into CWC and your experiences and lessons learned over the last few years. And I look forward to watching your growth and possibly spending some time away from businesses together in the next 6 months.
And likewise, thank you very much, Rick.
Just before you go, after Larry and I finished our conversation, he shared one of his tips for managing his email inbox. So I thought I would share that short snippet at the end of our conversation.
One thing that really gets me down, and is if I go away for a day or 2 and I come back on my emails, you sit down and think, Jesus, where do I start? I create 3 folders on my left-hand side: action today, action later, and action future. But use that in conjunction with the 4 Ds, which is you delete it, you delegate it, you do it now, you decide when to do it. I organize the emails and I sort it into those folders. And I only leave in the inbox stuff that I'm going to work on now. Otherwise, I pop it into my action today. And then I know I've got to get that done by the end of the day. Otherwise, it's not urgent. It can be due in the next week or 2. It's something that's made business in some ways quite ineffective because people are just responding to emails, and people get a lot of free advice via email because you're not billing them for your expertise and time in responding to something that they're inquiring about.
Yeah. Email, often it's a reactive drive. So we're not controlling our day. We're reacting to things that come into our inbox. And email is a way for other people to give you work rather than for us to define